Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Showverse. Today, I have with me a very special guest. I have the writer and director of a very interesting short called This Little Piggy Goes to the Market, which tells the story of a OnlyFans content creator who is forced to show her face in a compromised situation. I have with us today Katherine Connor Duff.
Hello, Noah. Hello, everyone. Happy to be here.
Now, for those of you that are at least with DWF and have seen this movie, you'll know exactly why I'm very excited to talk about this. And for those that haven't, and why I seem to be much more smiling, it's because this is a very unique sort of story, as it follows an OnlyFans content creator whose focus is predominantly on her feet, which we don't really see those kinds of movies, especially, nowadays with, a lot more sex positive and even OnlyFans has hit mainstream. You don't see these kinds of stories being told.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that hit the mainstream is in some ways true, but I do feel like people get slightly more uncomfortable with things like fetishes and things like kinks in specifically America. I think that we're very chill with having a bunch of sex everywhere, a bunch of violence. I think that everyone has kind of made their peace with that. But with kinks and fetishes specifically, I do feel like there is still some prudishness because of its specificity. I think that it makes people uncomfortable because it's so specific to each person. Like everybody has a quirk, everybody has a kink. What's your thing? Like that's how it works. So I think that people feel uncomfortable with that, which is part of why I wanted to get into it. Although it is, as you know, it is the thing that couches my real point. But specifically for the fetish hook, it was something that interested me because of that.
No, and that's the thing. It really does. It doesn't ease you into it. It's, you're thrown right off the deep end. But at the same time, you are right. We see violence in movies and sex on TV, as a certain show has put it.
Mhm.
But you are right. With the exception of some European films, we don't really see that sort of focus on any sort of American media. And what's even more interesting is that your film is not necessarily like, it's not explicit in the way other movies are. It touches upon it, but doesn't go so gratuitously into it, which I actually do respect. There's a lot of restraint there. It's enough to help the average viewer digest what this world is and what I guess the kink represents to a lot of people. And I think making it palatable doesn't detract from the kink itself.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up, Noah, because I did do that on purpose. I find that to have a sex scene or to have a kink on screen that is then extremely gratuitous, you're going to lose a lot of people pretty much right away. Or less so about the prudes. I find that it's distracting from the story. So you have a sex scene with an actor, and then you start thinking about that actor. Potentially you're attracted to them, or potentially you are like, is that what they really look like? And then all of these things that don't matter to the story start going in your head when you see a sex scene. So I find them distracting. And I also think that it doesn't really encompass, because what is sex? What is a kink? What is a fetish? It's about need. Like, so people just say, oh, sex this, sex that, but what is behind the sex? Like, you have things like possession, you have things like loneliness, you have things like need, you have things like desperation. Like, you have all of these pillars, right? That different kinks or different people kind of tap into of what they need the most. So what I wanted to do with a fantasy sequence, which is obviously the most it's not explicit at all, but it's the most, I guess, sexual of the things you see potentially. I wanted that to encompass how these men view it in their brains, because we're not going to really understand them unless we go into like how they're feeling, not what they're doing with the feet, who cares? Like, it's how she makes them feel. and how looking at her pictures, then they insert themselves into those pictures. So it's like she's become this kind of figure to them, this kind of almost celebrity, but this kind of need for them where they fantasize themselves with her because that is what goes on inside the mind of a fantasy a lot of times is you are inserting yourself in a perfect form who's attractive to everybody. That's what fantasy is. You're suddenly like this god, which I showed in the fantasies, and everything that you want to happen happens. So it's a bit of innuendo. I think we know what they're doing when they're scrolling on the phones, but I didn't want to show that because who cares? And like everybody knows that, you know, like let's show it like what's going on in their brains because that is more interesting to me.
What is also deeply interesting and what you kind of bring up is that the same can kind of go for horror in a sense. You know, what's the scariest thing? It's what you don't see. Your brain conjures up the perfect sort of image that would frighten you. The same can go for a fantasy. Your brain conjures up the most perfect and beautiful thing without any sort of imperfections, which those sequences definitely did very well on. That I will give you this. For someone who's not into feet, you definitely managed to shoot it in a way where it's like you can still understand the need and the desire to want that sort of kink. It's actually something that I do think I must give you and your team props on because it is, in a way, giving a very intense level of understanding that I would never otherwise have thought about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, my crew was fantastic. A lot of Steven, my DP, and Ryan, my gaffer, had both worked in commercial and beauty, specifically beauty commercials. So they knew how to light pieces of bodies, which is super important for lighting the feet properly, because a lot of that is literally just how they're lit and then how the actors are reacting to them. I will say that I had, you know, me personally, not my thing. However, I had an ex-boyfriend who was a foot fetishist, and he was just obsessed. Like he was so one-track mind about it. Like it really took over any kind of intimacy, which was extremely interesting to me. And he followed all of these Instagram models, which is kind of how I first came up with the idea. Was I was like, wow, this is like a whole industry, and these women have so many pictures, and they have so many followers, and these men are all over, you know, with their Instagram accounts, like, oh God, she's so great, like she's so hot, and they can't even see her face. And I said, that is incredible, and like, what a whole, you know, secretive but not so secretive industry. And and in choosing feet specifically, I think that it is relatively it's a harmless kink. I think that it's not too upsetting for people. I think that it's pretty common and it's funny. So that is also why I chose it because there are other kinks, for example, which are more which you would have to be graphic with potentially. You'd lose people, and it wouldn't quite make the point that the feet did.
With feet, you talked about for a second, like things that are open, kind of like an open secret. I think that's the best way I can describe it. I mean, with film, the internet, and just everything in general and forms of all media have now become widely digestible by everybody. There are now things that used to be at the bottom of the iceberg that are right now near the top. I mean, even at work, there are people who don't know anything about movies who know that Quentin Tarantino has a certain interest. So, you know, I don't think this film could have been made 10 years ago. I don't think so. But now, thankfully, it has. But I do want to get more into the specificities of at least your story because, you know, you talked about the inspiration in regards to, you know, I have an ex-boyfriend and there's this market here that I was just not aware of. So you wanting to tackle it, it really is a main drive. But what about the story in particular, like the actual intricacies that follow? What were your inspirations behind that?
Yeah.
Um, so sorry, go on.
Yeah, so I think that there were a few. Now I write everything that I do, I write everything that I do. And then once I am writing what I do, I read it like 20 or 30 times. So it goes through many iterations. I'm a perfectionist, and the script is oftentimes exactly what you see on screen. I'm definitely that kind of director. So the inspiration came from a couple of different places. One was my ex-boyfriend. I was interested in exploring kink fetish things that make people relatively uncomfortable for no reason. I think the more open we are, the better. I was also very inspired by obviously the social media situation that we find ourselves in, the branding, the kind of, I find it interesting to delve into things that people are accepting just without question. I think that that's where dangerous things happen when you don't question things, and I think that how we've all kind of just accepted social media and accepted this kind of new form of promotion without much pushback. You just kind of have to do it, and you just do it. Kind of looking around like, why is nobody saying anything? Because I've seen pitfalls. Now that brings me to another one of my inspirations, which was actually, and I say this, I did not mean this to be any kind of hit piece on men, I will say. It was just the nature of the story.
Mhm.
Because one of my inspirations for this, two of my inspirations actually, were male streamers. One of them was Dream, who was a Twitch streamer who played video games with a mask on. He had this great, sexy voice, and he decided one day to take his mask off. And that was a terrible idea because he was not a bad looking guy, but he could never live up to the fantasy of 5 years of people listening to his voice, imagining what he might look like. And everybody's fantasy is different. So when he broke that fantasy, that almost agreement that he had with his followers, with his subscribers, people who had been paying him money as well, let's not forget, for years, they were furious. And he was, I think he's still streaming now, but he was pretty much ruined because he was one of the top performers. And then another one, which was interesting, was Hub's Life, who was on TikTok, who had a 9 to 5, and he filmed himself doing his 9 to 5, and then he quit his 9 to 5 once he was making enough money filming his 9 to 5, and he wanted to be an influencer. Most of his audience were 9 to 5ers, and they did not appreciate that. They were like, well, I'm still stuck at my 9 to 5. Like, what the hell? Who do you think you are? And they completely, like, his comment section was vicious, extremely vicious. So some of my inspirations, like I said, were actually men. So it's not a zeroing in on males or anything. It's just that my experience as a woman is what it is. And I do think that I wanted to comment a little bit on the internet culture of always wanting more and always raising the bar, and always, show your face, I need more of you, I need more of you. And then not liking what they get once they get a version of you that is not branded or is not polished or whatnot. So it came from a couple of different places, which is typical of me. And it is the third in my Voyeur series as well. So I did want to make the third final film about modern performance and what it does to the modern performers, how a modern audience really is really what Piggie is about, is what are you dealing with a modern audience. And then I wanted to do the split screen as well, because I heard about Netflix's mandate about second screens, and so a little bit came out of spite, a little bit, where I'm like, oh really? Second screen mandate. Well, try 5 on.
We will get into that because there are certain elements of it that I actually do want to talk to you about, especially in regards with your DP, Stephen. But I do want to actually talk a little bit about the casting.
Mhm.
Well, because this is it's not a very vulnerable role in the extent that we do talk about vulnerable roles, but it's still one, especially with the final 2 minutes. It's still a very hard role to kind of play. You have Penelope played by Sienna Salinda, and I, as as brilliant as she is, she does have that nice voice, like, oh, come on, guys, what's going on? Great voice.
Mhm.
However, and this will move on to other actors that are in this as well.
Mhm.
How did you, first question, how did you pitch this role to her? And second, how did she react when you essentially told her, yeah, we're going to be focusing more on your feet for a large majority of the movie?
Yes. So I know a lot of talented actors here in LA, but I always hold open auditions, and I don't believe in nepotism. So, you come, and you everybody has the same chance, because whoever is the character wins. Um, she Now, I made it clear from the beginning, from auditions, what the role would entail. So during emailing people, before the auditions even happened, when I was asking for self tapes, I said, I'm going to need pictures of your feet. And I am very sorry, but a large portion of the film is your feet on screen and nothing else. So I need to see if you have good feet or not, because it has to be believable that these guys would go for this woman. I did give an option. I said, if you're uncomfortable, and this got sent to everybody, if you're uncomfortable having your feet, sending in your feet, like, please let me know, or if you're uncomfortable in any way, let me know, and it will not deter me from casting you in the future. And Sienna was down with all of it. The audition process was pictures of feet. It was the final scene where she shows her face, because I needed to see if they could get there emotionally. And then it was the scene with Duolingo, to show her kind of quieter side and her safe space. She's a very gentle person, ultimately. And then we rehearsed. So I come from a background of theater. Um, and I believe in rehearsal. I know that film, you don't always get it, but as long as I have the independence that I do, which comes with pitfalls and good things, but it does come with freedom, and I get to do what I want to do, and I believe in rehearsals. So I choreographed this thing for her feet, and then Sienna and I practiced it for a month or two. Every week we went over the voice. So you brought up the voice. That was very specific to me. We did come up with that voice together, sort of based a little bit on Marilyn or Bridget Bardot, and some of these great sex icons of the 20th century. So the voice was very carefully tailored as well. And yeah, she had one day of shooting. We shot everything that she did in one day, because and that's how I was with all of the actors. So everybody got their own day. And it was a little bit like a one-man show for every single actor. And she nailed it, like she nailed it. I was thinking maybe I would have to have a foot double, and maybe I would need to split up the role into three: voice, face, body, and feet. But I didn't have to. She nailed all three. She's phenomenal.
Hey, it's always good to have an actor who's like an actual real trooper, who's just like, you want to know what? Do it. I'm ready. I'm ready. Look, I know what this role is. Just give it to me. I'm ready. S-
Yeah.
Um, but that's just with Penelope.
Mhm.
You do have three of the main patrons who do take up a large portion of the runtime as well. You have Legal Nightmare, played by Crosby. You have Joe's, played by Frank, and you have Yahoo All Night, played by Ezra. Now, did was the same sort of casting process that you did with Penelope, the same with them as well?
No, so for their auditions, I wrote each of them a monologue that's not from the script, where they, in character, talk about Penelope to a fake interviewer, so that they have a relationship with the screen. And then the second tape that I asked for was them walking around their home, doing whatever, just film it, like grabbing a cup of coffee or playing a video game or whatever, and pretend like the camera's not there. Because that was a very important part of it, was that they wouldn't acknowledge it. They would, the camera being completely invisible while they're wandering around by themselves. And they have to be entertaining enough by themselves, because there's, mostly no one else there with them. But they also can't be too distracting, because we will be moving around the boxes, and we very scientifically figured out where the eye should go throughout.
And that actually brings me to what we talked about earlier that I wanted to hold off until now. You do quite a few split screens. In fact, a good chunk of the movie is actually split screen, filled with different aspect ratios and even different framing.
Mhm.
Now, it's already hard enough to frame just a single image in a way that's the most appealing and most impactful, but to split that up into four and even some cases five shots, or even towards the end, eight.
Mhm.
Um, Describe to me that process because I know a lot of people have seen split screens done on movies, but they don't know how hard it is to actually get those set up and executed in a way that's not distracting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So a main influence for me and Steve was an old film. I'm a classic film buff, and a lot of my references are older. So there's this film called Pillow Talk from the 50s with Rock Hudson and Doris Day. It's a comedy, and they do a lot of split screens that you really haven't seen since. Where they, they splice film up and they, if you see my box here, like they went like, this and then like this. And, so they did all these split screens that didn't age well, I suppose, and that no one's ever used again. But I was like, oh, how interesting, and I love that. Um, so that was a real inspiring thing. And then I sat down with Steve, who he's always the first one to read my stuff as well. And, I said, how do you see this visually? Like I said, he said, well, do they have to all be on screen at the same time? Because I said, I want her to be running continuously. I want her live stream to be in real time. And the rest of them, ish real time. And he said, we could have, her box over here, and then we could edit the men where every time they have a line, like they pop up on this screen. I said, no, and I want to be watching all of them the entire time. It's very important to me that we voyeur on them because that's a perspective that I think a lot of us don't think about. If we're like, watching something on our computer, which is a compromising thing. Like, do you ever think about how you actually look? Like, how bad you look? Like,
Just
no. How great? Yeah, exactly. Like, how great is that? So that was important to me. So he came up with a couple of different iterations of how the boxes, a couple different aspect ratios. And I picked the one with Joe on the bottom as the, stalwart. And then Legal Nightmare and Yahoo up at the top. And that gets into editing as well, which was a very complicated, long process, 2 months with Patrick. Because then, of course, once you have the aspect ratios there and once you frame everything out, which Steve did perfectly because he's, a creative genius, but he's also a mathematical genius. So he was able to, there wasn't really an issue with framing once we shot. Everything fit into the boxes properly. And then came the editing, which was a challenge, I will say. Like the shooting was pretty smooth. The editing was where we were like, oh, like we didn't get enough of like this shot in this framing from this actor on the day of. So we have to cut here. But oh no, your eye is going to go over there. The minute you cut, your eye will go like that, But we want the eye to be over here. So it was a very complicated. It's boring. I know. It's mathematical. Like it's just a lot of science and math. And when I write, it's very not that. I'm a very muse-based person where they come to me and I'm, kind of insane. But then once we come to post, then it's science and math.
oh, I gotta put it there. I gotta put it there. Oh, great. Now I gotta put it there. Oh, why do I hate this process so much? By the way, I hate editing just as much. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's important. No one's gonna knock any editors. But there's a reason why anytime I try to make short films, I always hand that off to someone else because I'm just like, I love the shooting process. That's always going to be the most fun. And I think that goes for any director, unless you're Terrence Malick. But what I actually do want to ask is each of the squares and portions of the screen, you are right, are mathematically and creatively distinct from one another. They all have their own world or personality, per se. And what I want to know is, at least from what I've heard right now, there was a lot of time like for a short film, there was so much time, probably months that went into just development and shooting alone. And I actually do have a list here. I'd like to draw praise to some of your creative leads. I'd like to give praise to Gabriela Cueva, who was the set dresser, Sarah C. Caldwell, who was the production designer, Judith Daly, who was your costumes and makeup,
And
and
nails.
what?
And nails.
And oh right, oh right.
Don't forget the nails.
You can never forget the nails. You're absolutely right on that one. But and finally, your DP, Stephen. Oh my Lord, Stephen Jared, Mangurden. Stephen, if you're watching this, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to butcher your last name. But and also, I can't believe I have to say this, but we will get into this later. Don't bring it up just now. But you actually have a stunt coordinator for one sequence, and that's a very funny sequence. I'd like to draw praise to Calvin. Um, sorry, Kavin. I How do you pronounce his last name?
Having more hard.
Because what is, and for those of you watching, why am I bringing up all of these people? Because this is a very detail oriented and intrinsically designed movie. And, we have split screens that occur all throughout, and each and every single one is telling its own story, going back to the whole voyeurism that Catherine brought up earlier, you brought up earlier. And I would like to, like I said, give praise to them because each one felt like its own little movie going on. But at the same time, I am at least the slightest bit curious. What was the development process, not the shooting process, the development process like to give each individual patron their own story and make their story feel like a lived-in world?
Yeah, no, and I mean, thank you for calling those people out as well because my team is phenomenal. I've worked with several of these people over multiple projects, and they never disappoint. I am lucky. So I would say that I think through so the meticulous like the detailing starts with a script. Uh, you have to, and I mean I don't know how other people, I don't know how type B people do. I'm very type A, so like you start it when you're writing it on the page. So I started it last year, so I started writing it was first thing. I started writing it around maybe June, I believe, like May or June. And then I had my final draft by August. Now I'm blessed, like I said, because I know these people from previous times. So from previous projects. So for example, I brought it to Steve in before I even finished the script. I started talking about split screens. I started talking about the visual aspects of it. So I brought that up with him in June. And then I spoke to Marco, who is a sound designer as well, super important. Because I started talking to him about the male Gorgon, which is what I named the men that all conglomerate and are asking her, demanding from her certain things,
Right.
all at once. So it's a very sound oriented piece. So I hired him before we even started shooting and just started talking to him because he does my post sound design as well. So started talking to him about the male Gorgon and how you're going to be able to hear five boxes at the same time. I hired Sparsh, my composer, before shooting as well. I showed him the script and I said, come up with a theme because I'm a big fan of music as well. So and I love musical themes. So shout out to Lost. There's a great theme from Lost, Desmond and Penny's theme, and all the characters have their own themes, and I love that. And I wish people did it more. So I said, let's come up with a theme for Penelope, and let's come up with a male theme, which then you can play with once it's shot. So he started composing in like August. We didn't start shooting till October. And then I brought it to Judith fairly early on, maybe 2 months before we started shooting. We started talking about costuming. I very much wanted a kind of Renaissance vibe to her specifically, Renaissance art. So I have a minor in art history, which has come in clutch with directing, I will say. Oh yes, yeah, the Met, by the way, is my favorite museum in New York. I went to school there, and I excuse me, I lived there. And so I brought all these things, these people, and then Judith loves the Renaissance as well, and then so she started doing her own research. I would say that I always start and answer long-winded answer to your question. When it comes to building worlds, for me, you always start with, it sounds stupid, but you start with the character and you start with what their qualities are and what you want to be visible on screen. Because what I wanted with the boxes was if you just look quickly at Yahoo all night and then let's say you hate his box and you don't want to follow him anymore, you'll still get that glimpse of who he was extremely quickly, just from the lighting, from the costume, from the Hawaiian shirt, from the gold chain, from, the slopping the drink, from, the kind of car, from the lift thing in the background. It needed to be quick so that when your eye was moving around, you could quickly isolate, like, okay, this world, that's what I can expect from that box. That's what I can expect from that box, and et cetera, et cetera. So Caldwell, phenomenal set designer. She, worked with me as well about, I love color. So again, a lot of these people have worked with me before, so they know that I love classical art. They know that I like classical framing. They know that I will probably do. It sucks that I couldn't do it with Yahoo because Ezra was in a car the whole time. But I love full body stuff. I don't think people do it enough. Everyone is always in the close up. You're up somebody's nose all the time. But in classic film, a lot of times people were full body. Yeah, sorry, I'm such a tangent person. I just like stop me, please, Noah.
You see, this is what's very unfortunate about talking with someone like you. It's because I'm exactly the same way. That's why I like doing these kinds of shows, because usually it's like interviews are like, oh, you only got like 15 minutes, and then then you're like, what do I talk about? What do I talk about? Meanwhile, here I'm just like, hey, open your mouth, just talk. That's the whole point. I'm trying to show this is the creative behind this movie. It's about showing who we are as people and what our inspirations are, even if that includes going to the fucking Met. And I it's to me, it's nice to see passion in something, wanting to share, like, this is what I did. I don't like using the metaphor or the comparison of a kid with like a crayon drawing and like trying to show their parents, like, look what I did. But at the same time, that's what I really want to bring out with people. I want the people I interview to be proud of the work that they've done and to express that genuine, not need, desire, the genuine desire to be like, I'm really proud of the work I did. I worked really hard on it and I really want to share it with people. That's why I kind of do what I do, because it's nice to see people get this passionate, because it's fun. It's genuinely fun for me. And I think for my viewers, because, I mean, for God's sakes, a little happiness, a little passion goes a long way. I feel like that's a good thing overall.
Agree. And I mean, the only thing that like is a bummer, which I'm sort of two minds about, like in today's world, it's if you make your work visible or not, online, easily accessible. Um, you know, there's this kind of gatekeeping mentality of like, oh, do you keep it alone for the festivals? But then people who, may be excited by passion or may be excited about fun, like, but I can't see it. Where can I find it, So I think that kind of is an interesting, with the film festival circuit, it's an interesting kind of play, back and forth, between like, do you put it out there? How much of your work do you put out there? I have this is part of a trilogy, so do I hold on to all of them? Do I release like one at a time? I don't know, so something I'm thinking about for sure.
No, obviously. And, the festival circuit is always the most difficult one. I went through it once. I've had multiple friends that go through it as well. It is, you try to follow the rules the best you can because you know how important it is, not just for yourself, but for the actual festival. But at the same time, we're still human. We want to go, is it my turn to show? No, no. Oh, okay. All right. Just let me know when you're ready. I'll be over here. It's deeply frustrating, but you understand why the rules are there. And
Rewarding, it's grueling and rewarding at the same time.
100%. And before I get on with my other next question here, and before you and I both go into a whole diatribe that's going to last 3.5 hours, which I know for a fact can and will happen if we're not left checked, um, is there any way other than the festival for people to watch your film?
No. Not at this time. That's the problem. I know. And I think that it may likely end up there, I will say. Because I love the festival circuit, and I love to, meet other filmmakers, and, it is a very good reason for keeping it, shrouded, because then people will want to come see it on the big screen. But I have several of my other projects, like I said, that I haven't put out yet, just because this was the final one. And we're in an interesting time where for, a long time, people said, don't put your stuff on YouTube, like that's, graveyard, like, don't do it, but then again, let's say it's about eyeballs now as well. So let's say you get onto a streaming service, one of these short film streaming services. A lot of people don't, subscribe to those. So do you put your work behind a paywall? Now it's more cachet, but do you put it behind the paywall because will people make that extra step to then, get the subscription to this service to watch your stuff? So it's all very interesting. I do plan on putting the second film in the trilogy, Pay Deferred, up on YouTube. Probably in September, maybe. I just want to launch it properly because, again, a lot of the same team, a lot of very talented people. We got some critical acclaim and some awards with that one. I think it's very funny. It has a brutal ending, just like this one, but it's a little softer, so a little more of a crowd pleaser. But yeah, so probably that in a couple months.
All right. Well, and you do also bring up a good point. And as we have, as you mentioned with Dream and online interactions with content creators, one of the one of the biggest examples of damned if you do, damned if you don't is you want to be able to share your phone with everybody, but at the same time, you kind of need to, I don't want to say recoup your losses, but you also need to you kind of need some a little bit back because you've already poured a lot of your own money into it, or rather you poured other people's money into it. So it's like, okay, let's try to get some of this back. It's a double-edged sword. I want to be able to share with everybody, but I'd like at least a little bit of compensation. And you get the whole, if you upload it for free, you know, you'll get everyone like online going, "Oh, hey, thank you." And then you'll have other people going, "Oh, wow, I guess you're just kind of like a content creator, not really a filmmaker." And then if you go the opposite route, you're called a sellout, you're called pretentious. It's picking and choosing your battles in the best way possible and worst way possible.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. I think that it's the question and the conversation is so relevant right now. I think that a lot of people are literally having this conversation as we speak about what they should do. I think it's highly relevant, and I think it really matters. And I believe that free access is important. I believe that gatekeeping, as it has been over the last couple of years, has gotten a little bit out of control. I think that there are a ton of talented people, and there are, the spots are shrinking. The industry is contracting for the moment. It could turn around if the studio system wakes up, and, which there are some signs right now, where,
Session, back rooms. Yeah.
exactly. So we just have to see if those are flukes, if they're sort of a paranormal activity event, or if they are a harbinger of change. Obviously, we all hope harbinger of change, but you can't count on it necessarily because they have been known to switcheroo before. So it's a very uncertain time, but that's why I love I've had such a great time at Dancing with Films, and the artists have never been better, may I say. Biased for sure, but they've never been better. I've been to some festivals where it has not been good. And this year, my block was fantastic. My fellow artists are bringing their 150% game. It's crazy, the talent. And, I just wish that, there was enough budgets for everybody, and that everybody could get paid and we could all, make a living, because it's really worthwhile. And people are saying interesting things, much more interesting than the studio system. The indie scene is saying interesting things, but isn't that always the way?
Because in the indie scene, people are willing to take more risks. They're willing to do things because, there's no people in suits overlooking you. You are able to actually take swings. And yeah, sure, miss, but if you strike a home run and if the right eyes see it, get out of here with that.
Yeah,
That's a one-way ticket up. I mean, and I do agree with you. I do hope studios take the right lessons from this, but we have seen studios take the immediate wrong lessons. I mean, we
Yeah.
saw everything, we saw things happen with Lord of the Rings. People, we had a passionately made, well-crafted, theatrical epic, but instead what we got afterwards was, oh, people just want to see hot people with swords and sandals. So we got stuff like Troy, Kingdom of Heaven, and a whole slew of other such projects in the similar sorts. I mean, even with
Extended version, please.
oh boy, vey. Oh, I could go on forever about that, but like I said, oh, wait a minute, why is it dark outside? Oh, we've been talking for 4 hours.
Yeah,
But
right.
um no, but moving a little bit back towards, because if I don't steer the ship, Lord knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Um but I brought up earlier that you actually needed to bring in a stunt coordinator for one specific scene involving a car. Now, well, let's try to talk about it without getting into spoilers, because I know that when I watched it for the first time, I actually did kind of belt out laughing because it's not that it's funny, it's just absurd. And so tell me about the setup and the execution of, bringing on a stunt coordinator and executing that stunt to the best of its abilities.
Yeah. He goes by CR, Kevin Morehart, my stunt coordinator. So CR, I've known him again for many years, and he's worked with me before. Um, and with this in particular, I brought him on as an animal handler as well. The dog that you see in the movie, Joe's dog, is CR's dog as well. So he came on as animal handler, and then he also did the stunt playing the ringer tortoise. It was an interesting thing because initially he wanted, as all stunt coordinators do, he wanted to hop up on the car and do like some, like very like actiony like stunt, and I wanted that too. I was a little bit more cautious. They are, you know, lion hearts. Like I get nervous behind the camera. Okay, like can we like not do that? Let's think of a positive thing that we can do that's not as dangerous. But it turned out, we went out to a parking lot and we're rehearsing it beforehand, and it was funnier. The spoilers, but it was funnier if he went underneath the car than over it. Like that would have been an impressive shot, most certainly. But it was there for the joke. It was there for the comedy. So therefore, it's funnier if he goes under the car than over the car with that
because
shot
people
specifically.
because it's like this. People popping into frame is always so funny. Like
Right. Well,
that was not worth it. But
no, I got
no, it's especially with any sort of stunt work, there's always a little bit of danger involved. But even then, something as mild as this, open communication, making sure everyone's safe is definitely the most important part. And, you
it.
know, from what I saw, it really was executed very, very properly. And like I said, I like to give praise to CR. That's his name, CR. Now,
Wonderful.
now, I will say this. There's two more questions that I got for you. The first one is there's a montage at the end of the movie, and it is basically the entire cast and crew's feet. Now,
Yes.
now tell me just what went into making that? Like, what was the process of that?
Yeah, I mean, it was harder than you'd think because, uh, you run out of time on shooting days, and then you're like, oh God, we got to get the feet now because not all the crew members come back for all 6 days that we had of filming because I split it up over 2 month, 3 month period on weekends. Um, so not all of our crew was going to be there. So of course we had to be strategic of whose feet we got. And we didn't get everybody's. Drat. But I like to always have my cast and crew on video for the credits. I did it with Pay Deferred as well previously because I don't think that crew gets enough credit. And I'm so glad you're bringing them up more so in this interview than others because they are so important. And they're so important to me, and I treasure them, and so I want them to kind of have that like that credit, that like spotlight on them. Now, a lot of them don't like it, and they don't want it, but I insist. Um, but with obviously anybody that didn't want their feet is fine. But that was kind of the joke. Was I was like, oh, let's get to know these people through their feet, or what shoes they're wearing, or what kind of actions they're going to do with their feet. Because I think that it's interesting because that's how people have gotten to know Penelope in the story. And I think that feet and shoes and how people, feet not so much, but shoes and how people walk and how people hold themselves and how people stand at functions, or, it tells you a lot about somebody. Like if you ever actually focus, if let's say you go to the club or something, that horrible place, and you go there and you watch people's feet like on the dance floor, like what are they actually doing? It shows how uncomfortable they are, like a majority of them in that stance. You have this kind of shifting, you have this, you know and everyone hates it and no one really wants to be there, and like it's awkward, and the feet tell, like even if they have like the smilest, the feet are telling the story. So I think that it's interesting to focus on things that most people don't, not in a sexual way, but just in a behavioral way. They kind of give you away a little bit, which I find interesting too. So that's where the idea for the credits came from, and some people had fun with it, and some people wanted to do it, and some people did not, and some people we just didn't get to, because they were, like I said, it was a real pain in the ass at the end of the day to be like, okay, like we got to get these people's feet on camera. And it was, because they were like, oh no, but I think it came across properly, and it made my point, I'd say.
No, it did. It definitely did. And I think just being blunt about it, there's never going to be a realistic or very I don't want to say non-confrontational, but there's never going to be a correct way of saying, all right, take off those shoes. Let's see those dogs. There's really no way that you can ever politely ask that.
True, true.
But I believe that despite the film's tone and even some aspects of the subject material, I believe the ending does actually help in encapsulating this feeling of both not sensualness, but aspects of desire and a little bit of comedy, because this is a slightly dark comedy.
It is. It's
Um,
satire. That's because
yeah.
that's what I tend to gravitate toward. Did you like it, Noah? Like, did you
Uh,
like the movie? Did you like watching it, or did you not? And I am fine with either answer because I find both to be rewarding to me.
Equally engaging. No. And this is what I will say. As I said before this interview started, I went into it not really researching it at all. I wanted to go in as blind as humanly possible. So I was particularly caught off guard when the first thing I saw on screen were a pair of beautiful feet and then a guy going, Penelope's my queen, my goddess, my duchess and angel. I'm like,
Yeah.
what the fuck am I watching? But here's the thing though. What I'm able to do is I'm able to actually just go, you want to know what? There's a story that's trying to be told here. Let me immerse myself into it. So, short answer, I did particularly like it. The ending I thought was a little abrupt, a little dark, and look, it does work, but as much as I am a filmmaker, as much as I'm a critic, I am an audience member first and foremost. So of course I'm just like, darn it. But
Did it
sorry, what was that?
bother you?
Oh, it did. It did bother me because I have had friends who I will not name, but who have had similar situations. And so it was just as much about me going, well, gosh darn it, that's a little bit unsatisfying to, oh, I was really hoping that this would be a little happier because I know far too many people that have this kind of ending.
Mhm.
So, it's very much, I have mixed feelings towards it, but none that I would consider to have sort of animosity or negativity. It's more about certain creative decisions and aspects of the outside world kind of seeping their way into my own personal views on the movie.
Interesting. Um, yeah, I think that a friend of mine saw it, and he said it's brilliant, and I hated it. I hated it. Which, like, I get it, and I do like to put up a mirror, and not even necessarily with sex work, because, like I said, this was not meant to be a hit piece on sex work. It was meant to be a hit piece on social media, which, you know, I think it works either way. It works if you just read it as a sex work story. I think that it also reads if you see beneath it, uh, at the real point that I'm making about how we're commodifying ourselves. This is not just OnlyFans people. Like, we all do it. We all do it. Anybody that engages with social media is attempting to sell themselves or their brands. Anybody that's a performer or anybody that, is trying to sell something online. And we are also the men. So with the looking right into camera that I have Penelope do at the end, and then I have the men do when they ask her, demand her to show them toward the climax. I wanted to break this fourth wall because I wanted the audience to relate to both Penelope and be right in her seat of how she feels with this endless need for content, and this kind of betrayal, but then also for us to experience what it's like as the men, because we are the men also. So, we can, essentially, like, whore ourselves out online as much as we want to. But we are also the people that scroll past people. And that's why I wanted to do a lack of catharsis, because I find that is quite, it happens so often that you don't even think about it. Like, how many TikToks do you scroll past? How many Instagram reels where you never see that person again? You come across a 911 call or something, and then you hear someone in tremendous pain, and you just scroll right past, and you never know what happened to that person.
Not only that, but what's actually interesting that you bring up is one, a couple things. But first is that I have, you bring that up. I remember a lot of influencers, content creators from just as recent as 5 years ago who got into some level of controversy or something happened to them, and now you don't hear from them anymore. These were these were superstars that you could make memes about. You could talk about it with someone else's on the internet. They would know. And now you bring them up, no idea who you're talking about. And
Mhm.
that's just as recent as 5 years ago. We're not even getting to, I mean, you're like what, 27? You're around my age. So it's like you've grown up with the YouTube world as well. Do you remember who Rice Gum was, or Leafy is here? These were the big, my point exactly. These were dominators of the content space back from like 2015 to 2016. They've had their controversies, and now, and like, these people had years worth of content, years worth of dominance, and now you don't even hear about them anymore.
Right.
Like you'd be lucky to hear even a whisper,
15
so
seconds, as they say, right? 15
exactly.
microseconds of fame.
And
And
then, oh,
may I say as well, not to
yeah,
go off on a rant, but
of
like
course.
the people that are in power, I am a little bit anti-billionaire, et cetera, and establishment, but the people that
Okay.
are in power, essentially, I think, have essentially sold these to us, right? And offered us this great gift of the internet with the promise that, as long as the economy is bad, whatnot, there's sort of this pressure to, but go monetize on your phone. Like, just go film your feet, or like go drop ship, or like whatever. Just go do it. And if you don't do it, you're lazy and you deserve to be poor, because you have the world at your fingertips. And that's a lie. Like, it's a lie.
Because here's the thing, it's you brought up the whole idea of selling yourself as a brand. But here's the thing, everyone is now selling themselves as a brand. Everyone's trying to get a
Brand deal.
partnership, a marketing deal. But the truth of, like, for example, like, I want to be a filmmaker, but I don't want to have to, I don't want to have to make vertical shorts every single day. I don't want to have to go reach out to what's it called, G Fuel, or Audible, and be like, hey, can I get this deal? Sure, it might be, a good path to maybe hitting mainstream success, but not everyone is built for something like that. Some people are built just to write a script and bring it together a group of people. And it's, you brought up, oh, you take this thing and, just go make a living. And it's okay, sure, but the path that you have laid out in front of us is not it's like it's only lucrative to like a select group of people. And, you're now encouraging everybody to walk that path, and not everyone has the right shoes or the right gear for it.
Right.
So
Well,
it is,
it's algorithm based. So like people that are not threatening in any way tend to do very well. People who are followers tend to do well because you just copy and paste what other people are doing, and you can make $200 extra in a month, whatever. But are you an artist? Like, do artists do well on social media? I would say visual artists, yes. But if you're saying something, tends to be not as much. Because what does the algorithm like not want? They don't want something that is threatening to, but whatever.
advertisers.
And no one, right, advertisers and no one is on their phone. That's the other thing too, is that like why have verticals taken off in the way that they haven't? All of my crew have worked on the verticals, by the way, like many people, a lot, work in LA. But they're very harmless and I mean, there's a lot of misogyny going on, but they're easy to take, I guess you could say. Like the storylines are not difficult to follow. They're not easy to take for misogyny and other things, but they're easy to follow. And why is something like that doing well? Because people kind of go on their phones now not to be necessarily challenged. They go on to relax. They go on to, while eating dinner or whatnot. So it's a very like, it's not really, I guess, the place where you want to be challenged in that way, potentially.
No, and it's mainly just it's the best way I can equate it to, and I know it's been used so much, is it's it's a fly just going around a bug zapper, ooh, pretty light, you're eating dinner, you're just,
Yeah.
it's there's a lack of real engagement that is going on with content. I mean, for God's sakes, there have been points recently where I'm looking at who is being propped up on social media, and I'm like, really? Like Clavicle, Hawk Tuah?
Particular. Oh,
Yeah.
yes. I have been following him as well. How interesting is he? How interesting.
I'm like, it I hate because I don't I because as I'm getting older, as you can kind of tell here, I've
It's not a sign of aging.
I
My dad went bald at 17 years old.
I started balding at 18, so oof.
So you get it a
I
little
I
bit.
do get it, but my point that I'm actually trying to make is that, when we're younger, we think, oh, how could the older people think like that? They just don't understand the young people. And then we get older and we look at the young people and we're just like, okay, maybe the older people had the right idea, because that is like the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And I'm trying to understand it and I just don't. And
I understand clavicular to a certain point. Like he's a very uh, harmful, he's a ridiculous person, but he's a
yeah,
harmful person if he has any kind of influence over young men, which I think he does, unfortunately.
yeah.
Things like bone smashing and stuff like that he does that are essentially who rises to the top? What cream rises to the top of this new social media age? The people who are the most outrageous, the people that say the things that are the most clickbaity, who get the most attention because what they're saying is outrageous. So and that goes beyond entertainment. What politicians do the best today? Whoever is the most visible. Who's the most visible? People that
Listen here, Catherine. You got to
see.
understand. It's
No,
the
but
mo
exactly. Like it has transcended entertainment and now it's infecting the political system where whoever is just on your phone the most, whoever the media pays the most attention to, who is going to be the most clickbaity person because the news media is somewhat failing and newspapers aren't doing well, so they're trying to get your eyeballs on them because now they're, competing with young bloggers and podcasters. So now the news media has to be more aggressive, and then they have to choose people who are more outrageous to spotlight. And that's how, we end up in where we are today. But things have changed, and nobody is really talking about it. Like, yes, we've talked about, Trump and how things are difficult now in the industry, blah, 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 blah. But we have changed. Like, it's not just the times. Like, we as people have changed the way we process things, what we pay attention to, who we give a platform to. Um, and I think that while we have noticed that times have changed, we have not so much done the inward work and been like, well, what do I actually look like on a daily basis? Like, how much time am I actually spending on my phone just because I'm looking at the image of people? We're having an interview, but you're not really here, and I'm not really there with you. We can connect our minds and everything else, but there's something physical of a conversation that is lost. And I think that we've gotten very used to looking at images of people, because that's what we are right now, is images of people to each other, and we can kind of fill in the blanks, but it's not physically happening. Like, I am alone in my house right now. Like, there's nobody else here. Your presence is here, but you're not physically here. And so we have to think about what that does to people. It will change them. I guarantee you, it has already.
No, and what's interesting that you bring that up is that um, other elements of life from even before 2015, I remember life before 2015 because I do believe that is the year that things really started seeping into the whole internet age.
Yeah.
And, you know, people are now, even kids as young as 17 are now saying, wait, how did time go by so quickly? And I'm like, wait a minute. When I was younger, like when I was 17, I never like that was not going through my head. Life was long. What is actually happening here? And
Mhm.
this actually goes back to a point that I wanted to bring up earlier before we went on our small diatribe, which is,
You
I'm
called
not
it.
going to. No, but what's interesting is that you went out of your way, not out of your way. That's not the right word to say, but you made a movie with a sort of intent to sort of criticize social media. Not necessarily OnlyFans, sex work, but more social media. What is rather interesting though is that there is intent and then there's the execution.
Mhm.
What you have made can be seen through different lenses. And
Mhm.
if you look at it through the social media, or even through the element of a phone, what I thought was rather interesting is going back to what you just said and what even I just said, which is, this level of physical disconnect and even me going, wait a minute, like how did time go by so quickly?
Mhm.
What people don't actually do and what your phones actually do for you is it records how much screen time you're actually doing. In fact, ever since an update in 2023, every week your phone will notify you as to how long each day you average on your phone.
Mhm.
And due to a lot more short form content, we are now seeing so many more people just kind of scrolling, digesting more, 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 which is something that we have seen. Even over the span of 14 minutes. Your
Yeah.
film essentially showed interest in a person, their rise, and then their immediate downfall once people were just spent with
Mhm.
them. So I believe personally that due to an overwhelming amount of short form content now and a decreasingly, shortening attention span, we are now still living our same lives, but so much more is happening now that we don't nearly have enough time to process a lot of these things. So much happens, and we sort of phase it all out because of the overwhelming amount of information that we are receiving on an almost daily basis.
Mhm.
That once everything kind of registers and hits, we realize that years have actually passed. And so it is.
Well, it also means that we all just have a different version of what truth is. I think that like all this arguing and all of this fragmentation, um, you know, I, I am a proud liberal of many years, born and raised in San Francisco. Thank you. But I do think that the fragmentation And I don't understand why certain, certain groups believe certain things, but I do know that this country will not continue in any kind of strong way if we can't have conversations with each other and if you can't have conversations with people with differing views. Now, I'm not saying go out and have a conversation with a fucking like KKK member. Like, that is not what I mean. I'm talking about the like conversations that you have with people who are from different political parties and you're like, I can't understand like why you would do that. And then they say, well, I can't understand why you believe this. And there is no kind of like, there's no common ground is the problem, because partly this is partly aggravated, I believe, by the digital age and by each of us having our own localized little kid gloves with our which our phones all treat us with, and we only get a certain kind of bent, a certain kind of news, a certain kind of community, whatever, and we don't see, ironically, we don't see a lot of different kinds of perspectives. And so we all kind of come away with a different version of the truth with our own sources. When someone else, your neighbor may have completely different sources and believe something entirely different and have all the evidence to back it up because, we're not going to the library, we're not having like, where we're kind of we don't have a unified. Now this is a great thing, it's a great thing as well that we have a large span of things to pull from, but it everybody is pulling their truth from a different place. So if you do that, that's fine, but then you have to be, I believe you have to be like able to challenge or to debate or to have an open conversation with someone who has a different truth. So yeah, I mean, I believe that there are true things that are just true, but that's my truth, and someone else may have a different truth about what truth is.
Oh, what's really rather interesting you bring that up is that I heard from one of the people I work with the other day just something that you said during lunch, because we had a very similar conversation, which was, and I quote, "The moment that dialogue ends, violence starts," and I think that's more prevalent today than most. So I do appreciate hearing somebody actively go, "Look, I don't agree with you, but can we at least talk?" Like, I feel like that's a reasonable thing, and that's a very reasonable stance to have. And circling all the way back around to the movie, hey, trust me, ask anybody. This is how conversations, even with me, kind of go. We start off with, "So how's your
Yeah.
movie?" And then it's just, "The downfall of civilization has started, and there's still time. We can fix this if we just
There
work
is,
together."
exactly, yes,
It's
there's still
I
time.
call that a Fister conversation. But to bring this all the way back around, what is rather interesting is there is even with all of the dialogue we just had,
Mhm.
there is that element of the dialogue sort of ending that kind of hits with your film without giving spoilers away. But, there, with this screen up, there is this, I guess you brought up the whole physicality element of it all.
Yeah,
I do agree with that to an extent, but I think a more poetic way to put it is it removes the soul. You just see images on a screen, but there's no heart that connects the two. There's no soul that connects it. And we see with your film is that it's just so easy to go, "Oh, whore." And it's just
right.
like hey, like you talked even earlier about how we see ourselves when we're not really paying attention to how we act, when we're just in the comfort of our own home, we have our jammies on and we're just doing whatever. But your focus on voyeurism is what I think is one of your strongest suits in regards to just this short film alone, because we're all guilty of doing it at some point. We're all the men in the movie. We have seen someone that we disagree with or that we think have betrayed us. And when something bad happens to them, of course, we're going to say something horrible under our breath because, what's the consequence of it all? But it's once we have that thrown back at us that we're just kind of like, "No, no, 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 no. I'm a good person. I swear." Really? Then why did you insert horrible thing here online? You're like, you're at a loss. And so I do, it's really been quite interesting on my side to actually get an inner looking into your brain in terms of how you think and process things, because I believe that even with your intent and the messaging that you were trying to convey here, there are multiple ways to interpret it, as well as actually giving levels of engagement, at least from a guy who had no idea what he was getting into, at least watching it twice. And I just, I do commend you for your satire as well as commentary, because I do think in the digital age, especially with what happened with Gooseworks recently, which have you are you know the Amazing Digital Circus and all the controversy that's been going on with that?
Oh,
Oh, basically, the creator of this very, very popular internet show, it was just getting dragged through the mud by her fans because she just made some creative decisions and got backlash for it to the point where now she's probably not going to make anything ever again. And if you haven't watched The Amazing Digital Circus, it is truly um, one of the most unique shows that I've seen around and a huge staple of animation. By the way, for those of you watching, go support Glitch. They are, if you're a fan of animation, they are one of the best ways and one of the best places to go to get your animation. But you read all this vitriol and there's no soul. You read it and you believe that the person writing that has no soul. And whether or not that is in some relation true is up for any sort of debate. But we as a society have gotten, I think, a little too comfortable in just throwing out derogatory insults and not really thinking about how it makes us look rather than how it makes them feel.
well, it doesn't like, it's they have souls and and it's anybody having a bad day. It's like traffic, but all the time, and I think it's a venting. It's kind of a way that people can vent. I think that it's sort of this toxic like feedback loop where people feel that they can only put the best version of themselves online and how great they are and how successful they are, when that's not true, but the opposite doesn't do very well, so you kind of have to put the best of your life online, and then the people that view it get all sad and comparative and jealous in some cases and angry, and want you to kind of do badly so they can feel better about themselves. So it kind of, even though you might be doing horribly, even in your $88 million house or whatever, maybe your son just died or something. Like it's these snapshots of people that we're doing. And that's also why I wanted to do the foot modeling as my main character, because it kind of is a metaphor for what we are doing to people and kind of what we're doing to ourselves, how we're selling ourselves in piecemeal, like the best versions of ourselves, like and ourselves in one vacation, or this piece or that piece, this carefully crafted piece that then I share with my small audience or my large audience, whatever. And then it kind of feeds this society of fantasy where we all live in fantasy now, where we're all on these screens and hoping for better, and saving recipes and potential curtains and things like that. Um, but yeah, so I think that the foot thing, just to bring it back, I
Right,
think
right,
that the
right.
foot is a good symbol as well for or peace modeling, kind of how we are doing that now, of curating things in a way.
What I believe there was a word I've been trying to look for to describe the overall theme of what you're trying to tackle here is parasocial. And I think that word is not talked about nearly enough, especially in this day and age, because now with how much we interact with each other online, you are right. We essentially give pieces and all of these snippets of our lives, but what we have instead created is a puzzle, is a essentially a puzzle piece, a puzzle board, with basically large chunks of it not fully filled in. So now people only assume that that's what the puzzle is supposed to look like rather than what it is.
Right.
And oh boy, okay. This is for those of you watching, yes, we have spent a little over an hour chatting. So thank you for Catherine. Thank you so much for sticking around and actually further engaging with this. I do appreciate it. Um, I do, however, have one final question. And trust me, I would love to continue on and on and on, but I know there's stuff you have to do and other stuff that I have to do. But I have one final question, and it's the same question I always ask every other filmmaker, which is you have now released This Little Piggy Went to the Market. And I'm guessing it's doing somewhat well in the festival circuit. I mean, it got submitted, so that's always, sorry, it got accepted. So that's always a good sign.
Even submitted is a win. You know what? Because that means you finished it.
Oh, exactly. That's the best part for any filmmaker to say. However, in the in the ongoing conversation and a slight subtle joke of wanting more, I gotta know, is there more that we can expect from you coming soon? What's your next project? Give me, I want more.
Very funny. Yes. So I'm actually kind of at a crossroads, I feel, because I have three different ideas that are all finished and ready to go, but there's only so much time that I have, and I am the executive producer, so I need to work a day job and then fund my own work. I
Yeah.
don't sell these feet, believe it or not. I wish I fucking would, because I'd maybe I'd make more projects. Um, but I have another short film series, which is called the Power series. That's next, the next trilogy, and that is about eviscerating American institutions, the pharmaceutical, the political, and the technological, which I feel is important to do nowadays. And I love to make shorts. You know, a lot of people are use proof of concepts as a way to stepping stone to a feature. You know, and the short can barely it's a scene or whatnot. I like to create four short films because if Flannery O'Connor can have like fantastic short stories, then you can have fantastic short films that are just meant to be short films. They're not meant to be made into features. So that's why I do these trilogies. And they are not meant to be features, and they would never have a life as a feature. I do not intend them to be that way. And then the other pathway that I'm thinking about is a way to completely blend the line between what's real and what's not. So that's something that I'm very interested in. And so it wouldn't be necessarily, I guess you could call it like a performance art piece. So yeah, those are the two avenues that I'm debating at the moment.
Well, whatever comes next, I look forward to seeing them. And for those of you watching, even though This Little Piggy Went to the Market is not available to watch as of right now, uh, any information in regards to it will be in the link in the description below. And on top of that, if and when it does become available, I'll be sure to add it because and look, I'll say it. Despite my initial knee-jerk reaction to actually watching the movie, I do think that it does have some pretty important things to say, especially in the content creation field, because Catherine's right. This isn't necessarily just about an OnlyFans model. This is about content creation, and essentially a sort of rivalry between creator and audience. So. If you have a chance to watch it at any point in time, I'd highly recommend it. I do think it is well worth your time. Um, I mean, you're already on your phone anyway, you're already on your computer. Why not actually put it to good use and watch something worth a damn? And on that note, that is where I will end the interview here. Catherine, thank you so much for being on the show with us today. I have had an absolute blast discussing film and, in many ways, life with you.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Noah. You were a pleasure to speak with and so intelligent. And I love conversations like this. So thank you so much.
Oh, no problem at all. So, to everyone watching, thank you for watching. Take care and have a good rest of your day.